Today, we're going to explore a really pivotal moment in history, the conquest of Jerusalem, which happened in the 16th year after the Hijra. And you'll see, this was so much more than just a military campaign. It was an event defined by brilliant strategy, the incredible character of its leaders, and a treaty of peace that would resonate for centuries. Let's dive in. So picture this. It's the year 16 AH. The map of the Near East is literally being redrawn. The mighty Byzantine Empire, after years and years of war, first with the Persians and now with this emerging Muslim state, is losing its grip on Syria. And for the emperor himself, this was a moment of absolutely profound loss. As he was retreating, it's said that Emperor Heraclius climbed to high ground, looked back one last time towards Jerusalem, and spoke those exact words. I mean, you can just feel the weight of that moment. It really was the end of an era. One great power was withdrawing, and the stage was being set for a new one. But how did this happen? This transfer of power wasn't simple at all. It was the result of a really complex military strategy. This wasn't just about who had the bigger army. This was a battle of minds. Okay, so the game plan, which was devised by the caliph Umar ibn al-Khattab, was just a masterclass in strategic thinking. Instead of one big head-on assault, he ordered his commanders to hit multiple key spots all at once. The whole idea was to stretch the Byzantine defenses completely thin, to confuse their leadership, and to make it impossible for them to ever group their forces together. And this campaign, it really featured a true clash of intellects. On one side, you had the Byzantine commander Artaban, who was known as their sharpest, their most brilliant strategist. So who do you send against a guy like that? Well, the caliph chose Umar ibn al-As, a man with a reputation for being just as cunning. Omar famously said, "We have sent against the Artaban of the Byzantines, the Artaban of the Arabs. Let us see how things will work out." It was like a grand chess match. So with the Byzantine forces now scattered and pinned down all across the region, the Muslim army, led by commanders like Amr ibn al-As and Abu Ubaidah, they marched towards the ultimate prize, the holy city of Jerusalem, which back then was known as Ahilia. Now, the city was incredibly well fortified. The siege was long and difficult. It lasted 4 grueling months, right through a harsh winter. We're told the Muslims endured the cold, the snow, the rain with just immense patience. But you can imagine, inside the city walls, hope was starting to fade. And as that despair grew, the city's leader, the patriarch Sophronius, he made this incredible offer. He said they would surrender Jerusalem peacefully, but there was a catch, a very specific condition. The surrender would only be accepted by one man. So the question was, who? The answer was just astonishing. The patriarch said he would only surrender the city to the caliph himself, Umar ibn al-Khattab. Now why? Well, according to the sources, he claimed that the description of the very man who would conquer their land was actually found in their own scriptures. Can you imagine? The news was sent all the way back to the caliph in Medina. And this is where the story takes a fascinating turn. It shifts from military tactics to something much deeper, a story of profound character. You have the most powerful leader in the entire region being summoned to accept the surrender of one of the world's most sacred cities, and he begins his journey from Medina. This quote from Umar really gets the heart of how he saw the world. For him, real honor, real strength, it didn't come from power or titles or riches. It came from faith. And this wasn't just a nice saying. He was about to demonstrate this principle in a very, very vivid way. When Umar arrived in Syria, he went to visit the home of his top commander, the governor, Abu Ubaidah. Now think about that. This is the man governing this huge, wealthy new territory. And what does the caliph find in his home? A saddle, a plate, a water skin, and a few pieces of bread. That's it. It's such a stark contrast to the kind of opulence you'd expect from the rulers they had just replaced. Seeing this, the caliph wept, and Abu Ubaidah's response was just so simple. Whatever gets you to your destination is enough. This was a leadership defined not by luxury, but by piety, by purpose. And it was this leader, embodying these very principles, who now stood at the gates of Jerusalem. So the patriarch came out to meet him, and upon seeing Omar, he reportedly recognized him from the descriptions he knew. The city gates were opened, Jerusalem was handed over. But what came next wasn't a victor's decree of conquest. It was a negotiated treaty, a document that would become famously known as the Covenant of Umar. So what did this treaty actually say? Let's break it down. First, it gave this sweeping guarantee of security. And we're not just talking about soldiers. We're talking about every single person in the city. Their lives, their property, their churches, even the sick and the healthy. It was a blanket of protection for the whole community, which was an incredibly thorough promise of safety for that time.
And then there's this. The treaty explicitly protected religious freedom. It spelled out that churches would not be seized, they would not be demolished or damaged in any way. Their crosses wouldn't be taken down, and, maybe most importantly, no one would be forced or harassed because of their religion. This set a truly remarkable precedent for tolerance, especially in an era when conquest so often meant forced conversion.
The civil terms were also laid out very clearly. The people who lived there would pay the jizya, which was a tax for non-Muslims living under Islamic rule. The remaining Byzantine soldiers had to leave. But here's the key thing for the local population. They had a choice. They could stay in complete safety, or they could leave with their property, and their safety would be guaranteed all the way until they reached their destination.
And look, this wasn't some informal promise or a handshake deal. It was a formal, written document. And just look at the names who witnessed it. Khalid ibn al-Walid, Umar ibn al-As. These were the absolute highest-ranking commanders of the Muslim army. Having their names on it showed just how serious this covenant was.
And that really brings us to our final thought here. The conquest of Jerusalem was, without a doubt, a remarkable military victory. But the story doesn't end with the battle. The treaty that came after raises a much bigger question, one that's just as relevant today as it was then. What is the true measure of a victory? Is it just the territory you gain? Or is it measured by the justice, the peace, and the security you establish in its place?